All right, guys. So, sometime in 2013, I believe, a movement was birthed in America that really spread across the world, especially fueled by social media. Uh, Black Lives Matter. I'm sure you remember that hashtag. So, 6 years afterwards, what has changed? I'm going to talk to one of the co-founders. Are you from Ghana?
I'm actually Nigerian.
Nigerian.
Yes.
So her name is Opal Tomety. Tomety sounds Ghanaian because I know a Ghanaian friend with that surname. So I thought you had some Ghanaian.
So this is the thing. My last name is actually Togolese.
Togolese.
So and Ghana, Togo. We're
nice.
very very close, and
Cool.
so you might have a friend who has that last name.
Oh, cool.
But might have some Togolese roots. So
Roots as well.
my great grandfather was from Togo. He migrated to the Cameroon. Then my grandpa was born in Cameroon. He migrated to Nigeria. My parents met in Nigeria, and they came to the U.S.
Fantastic. So Black Lives Matter. I mean, I remember, although it started in America, even those of us in Ghana, we sort of caught the trend and we were fighting for that cause. So what has changed in terms of that fighting against racial profiling, police brutality against the blacks and all of that after you started?
So a lot has changed, but I think what I'd want to first just start out by saying is that the movement was really inspired by people's experiences, their everyday experiences, witnessing so many types of injustices in their own personal lives, but also, watching it unfold on television. And so seeing unarmed black people, children, women, men being gunned down with impunity by police or vigilante or some kind of self-ascribed security guard who really doesn't have the authority to be engaging in that way. We were just tired of it. And we kept seeing this time and time again. We were seeing the frequency with which it was happening. These are things that we had known for some time, but the fact that we could have video footage, you have your cell phone, people are documenting it on their own, you have this video footage, and it's being streamed quite literally into your own phone, so you get to watch and consume it, or you're seeing it on your computer, or you're seeing it on the television. I think people were extremely traumatized, we were extremely pained, and at the same time we were very outraged. We were upset that this would be happening in this day and age, in the 21st century, with all the good, with all the news about, we're being post-racial, we have a black president, we have Oprah Winfrey, we have all these, black celebrities who are successful. There was this notion that, black people, you've arrived, you don't need to talk about anything else, you have a black president, so stop talking about race and racism. But it was just way too clear to us that anti-black racism, specifically in the United States, was still alive and well and needed to be addressed, needed to be dealt with, and that the senseless killing of unarmed black people day in, day out, almost every other day in the United States this is happening. We just knew that we had to do something completely different. We knew, and so myself and two other brilliant women helped to start Black Lives Matter. But I also, I don't like to take so much credit for it, because I think I bought the domain name, I started the social media handles, and encouraged other organizers around the world to, and around the United States to use Black Lives Matter, and worked on it strategically. But it's really that people were tuned into who they are, right? People were tuned in to what was taking place, and they wanted to take action. And so to me, it's really important to acknowledge that there are people of conscience, people who are looking at their family members, looking at their children, saying, I don't want this kind of life for my child. And for me, on a very personal level, I started Black Lives Matter because my youngest brother was 14 years old at the time. And I couldn't imagine that my 14-year-old brother would have to see such violence happen, right? Such violence, and to see it time and time again in the media, and also to see that we don't have justice. We have no semblance of justice. And so specifically what inspired us to write, Black Lives Matter the first time was Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old boy who was gunned down by a self-ascribed security patrolman in his own neighborhood, George Zimmerman, racist guy. He stalked this teenager. He stalked him in his own neighborhood where his dad lived. and where he lived and where he was going to go watch the basketball game. He stalked this boy and killed him. And I just remember sitting there learning about the case, learning about how finally George Zimmerman was on trial, but then it felt as though Trayvon Martin was on trial for his own murder. It's just crazy. It's crazy. This kid is on. He was the one who was killed. And then I was outraged when I found out that he was acquitted. And I just knew that I didn't want to live in a world where this was the end of the story, right? Like, I could not imagine that this was going to be it. And I wanted to do work to ensure that this wasn't the end of the story, that we had people who tell another story, and we have an alternate ending to this. And so what was great is that I wasn't the only one. I am an organizer, right? So I work and I advocate alongside people. I've been doing that for many, many years, work on racial justice issues, working on immigration issues. But there are countless people around the world who also were doing the same. And so we, essentially teamed up and were able to create a platform that allowed us to harness our voices, amplify our voices, and get a message out there that was different. Because, like I was saying, it could have just been, oh, George Zimmerman was acquitted, end of story, that's it. But we're saying no, never.
Great. And the great thing about starting a movement like this is sometimes you don't even know how it's going to end. And I believe it has triggered a lot of things. Looking back, what were some of the things that you can say, giving that people that voice, that togetherness you've been able to achieve together with this movement?
So I think what's been so powerful about Black Lives Matter is that it was first and foremost a love message to us, right? It was a message first and foremost for Black people, and just to say, like, hey, we affirm our existence. Our lives actually matter despite all of what we see. We have to have a sense and a knowledge deep within our bones that we matter, and so that we don't have to take this nonsense. We don't have to take this kind of violence that's being exacted on us. And so I think what's been powerful about it is that people get that. And I think there's a sense of pride and a sense of real dignity that is clear now that might not have been as palpable before. I think there's something so vibrant that's happening in the culture. And so it's not only that there's activists or organizers or people who are like civil rights organizations or things, but everyday people who might not have been engaged in any kind of social issue activism before are saying, you know what, this is for me too. Like, I have a responsibility as well to speak up in my workplace, at my church, at my synagogue, at my mosque, wherever I'm at. I can use my voice. And so there's something so beautiful that's happening. There's been a cultural shift where people are realizing that no, I do matter, right? And that there's anti-Black racism that exists in the world and exists everywhere. It's so pervasive that it's not just about police brutality, right? For when we created Black Lives Matter, I specifically helped to build the website, and we said things like, we're concerned about the education system. We're concerned about healthcare system. This is about Black immigrants and refugees. This is about Black people with disabilities. This is about Black queer people. So we were really, really intentional about ensuring that this was about all Black people, and every sphere of our lives matter. And that to me is, I think, what is powerful. And I think it's powerful because it actually is what we're seeing now. We see educators, quite literally. I have a friend of mine in Seattle who is phenomenal, Jesse, and he's leading a group of educators and saying Black Lives Matter in school. So how do we change our curriculum to ensure that Black kids are being taught in a way that includes their history, in a way that includes messages about civic engagement, that includes messages about their own ability to advocate for themselves in various ways. And that is part of our education system. How can we encourage the youth to think critically and act critically?
This conversation, has it become more difficult for you now when you have a president who sort of sometimes pushes it to the point where there's like he's advocating for white supremacy? Is it particularly difficult under Trump?
Yeah. I mean, to be quite honest, it is difficult under Trump. I think it's difficult under Trump because what he has done is he's emboldened white supremacists, nativists, neo-Nazi groups. He essentially, I mean, he didn't create himself, let me be very clear. He didn't just, come into being and come and be president, on his own doing. Granted, but he knows how to use media. He's a marketing genius in some ways and was able to play up and create a sense of fear amongst white people and amongst white women and was really able to distort what was really going on and really just use a lot of lies. I think it's been said that there are 12,000 documented lies that this president has told. Like 12,000. What is happening is almost unconscionable. Like it's bananas to me that he hasn't been impeached yet, to be quite honest. But what is difficult is that he has not only been out there spreading lies. He's infecting the public, but he has also been out there emboldening people who have no, morals or who are so venomous and who have been looking for the opportunity. They've been waiting for the opportunity and the green light to say, I can go out and now I can go attack so-and-so. And they've been doing that. And a lot of hate crimes have been happening. And hate crimes have spiked ever since he came into office. And it's a really scary time, particularly for black people, for people who wear hijab, right? Hijabi women, or just black women who wear headscarves. Because a lot of us, we just do it for style, it's fashion. But I've had friends of mine who've been harassed, who've been targeted. I've seen even in New York, street vendors being harassed because people thought they're Muslim or they're this or that. They have these perceptions around who they are and are telling them to go back to their country. You see the president attack 4 congresswomen, some of the most popular congresswomen of all time. You see him attack them and say, go back to your country. And they are U.S. citizens. They're Americans, 3 of whom were born in the United States. And so he's so ignorant, and he's spreading that ignorance, and he's encouraging people to act ignorantly. And it's really scary when you have that level of just ignorance that's pervasive, that's encouraged, and that's also turned into policy. And so, a lot of the work I do, and I shared earlier briefly, that is also around immigration. And so we're seeing at the U.S.-Mexico border and beyond the ways in which families are being torn apart. They're being ripped apart from each other. And children are being sent into camps. And people are being sent into cages with no ability to shower or clean themselves, no toothbrush. It's unconscionable that in the year 2019 that you would have the United States of America be engaged in such barbaric behavior on a policy and practice level. It's really painful. It's really painful. It sets a very, very bad precedent, not only for what's happening in the U.S., but around the world. And it emboldens some of the countries that might not have had the same or best practices to also engage in really violent behavior against some of the most vulnerable people on the planet. And so, it makes the work extremely difficult. But at the same time, we've seen people come out the woodworks to support. So the movement's growing. And we're, in fact, the majority. We are actually the majority of the people, our values and our beliefs, where we say, no, we can have a democracy that works for everybody. We can have a multiracial democracy that works for everybody. No, we can work and operate on the international stage and engage in foreign policy in a way that's just and dignified. And that's the majority of the people who believe that. The challenge was our electoral system, right? If people remember, Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote, right, by over 2 million. So, but the ways in which our electoral politics work, technically he won, but he's not popular. He's not, like, his views aren't popular. It's only amongst a minority, but they're a very violent minority, and I think that's what we have to be mindful of.
Earlier, you did mention that people look at successful black celebrities and assume everything is good. They've now had their share of inclusion and everything. Do you feel these people have added their voice to the needed voice to the movement as much as they could have?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of really great work for some very high-profile Black people. And I've been really encouraged, and I've been able to meet a number of them, and some of whom I've become friends with, and I provide advising to, and so on. And so that has been extremely heartening to me. And I'll always, look to people who have their platforms, whether they're Black or white or Latino or Latinx or, Asian, whatever, to use their platform. If they understand what's going on, if they see what's going on, if they're moved and pained or even pained by what's going on, that they should use their platform and leverage their platform for good. And so that's been really encouraging to me. And then there are some who, I could say probably could do better. Could probably, make more bold stances, right? Who could probably donate and give more. But I think that there are some people who are navigating how they can do that, how they can engage the movement, how they can leverage their platform. And my hope is that as more and more people do, that they will feel more protection, right? Because I think part of what happens is that there are a lot of celebrities who might not take the risk because they're afraid of the backlash, which is real, right?
Yeah.
We see somebody like a Colin Kaepernick who goes out, he kneels, he's making a statement, completely justified statement, right? One that is actually rather patriotic despite all of this ridiculous reframing and lies that are being told on him. But you see that he's blacklisted, he's blacklisted from the NFL. And so, we're hoping that that will turn around, but you see that you can sometimes make a stand, and you might face backlash. But at the same time, that sacrifice is necessary. We need it to be so abundantly clear that what's at stake. Black lives are what is at stake. And so some of those sacrifices, monetary or otherwise, are worth that because the potential is it's greater.